Astoria, Oregon, is a charming coastal town with misty mornings and historic streets, nestled where the Columbia River meets the Pacific Ocean. Known for its beautiful Victorian homes and rich maritime history, Astoria was the kind of place where life moved at a slow, comfortable pace. But as Halloween approached each year, a chilling story would begin to resurface. A tale of an encounter that happened years ago, one that the locals whispered about in hushed tones. It was a story about Grace Thompson, a woman from Astoria who experienced something terrifying, an event that still haunts the town to this day. It was late October 1998, and Halloween fell on a Saturday. Grace had lived her entire life in Astoria, enjoying the serenity of the town's coastal views and its sense of community. After her recent divorce, she had moved into a small, picturesque cottage just outside of town, surrounded by trees that would sway in the coastal breeze. She welcomed the quiet, but being alone after years of marriage also made her hyper-aware of every creak in the house as it settled. On that Halloween night, Grace handed out candy to the few kids who braved the walk to her cottage, which was a bit out of the way from the town center, where most families gathered for trick-or-treating. By 10 p.m., the doorbell had fallen silent, and Grace assumed the night was over. She turned off the porch light and settled into her living room, a glass of wine in hand, while the wind picked up outside, making the tall trees sway and the branches tap against her windows. As she was about to head to bed, the doorbell rang. Grace frowned, checking the time. It was nearly 11 p.m., too late for trick-or-treaters. A strange unease washed over her as she walked toward the door. Astoria was safe, a peaceful town, but something about the late hour made her hesitate. She peeked through the peephole, but saw nothing on her porch, just the dimly lit yard illuminated by the moonlight. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Grace's heart raced as she slowly opened the door, leaving it cracked just enough to see who was there. Standing on her porch was a young boy, no older than 10. He was dressed in old, tattered clothes that seemed wrong for the night. His pale skin and messy dark hair gave him an eerie appearance, as if he had wandered out of the nearby woods. The boy stood unnervingly still, his head tilted downward so that his face was partially hidden in shadow. "Can I help you?" Grace asked, her voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. The boy slowly lifted his head, and when Grace saw his eyes, she froze. They were completely black, no whites, no irises, just two voids staring back at her. Her heart pounded in her chest and a chill ran down her spine. She had never seen anything like it before. "Can I come inside?" the boy asked in a flat, emotionless voice. Fear surged through Grace. Everything in her told her to shut the door, but she felt paralyzed, trapped by the boy's gaze. His eyes were wrong, unnatural, like something out of a nightmare. Every instinct screamed that this child was not what he seemed. No," Grace stammered, trying to break free from the grip of terror. "I think you should go home. It's late." The boy didn't move, didn't blink. He simply stood there, staring at her with those soulless black eyes. "Let me in," he repeated, more insistent this time, but his face remained emotionless. Grace's hand trembled as she gripped the door, her knuckles white. She felt like the air around her had thickened, suffocating her. The boy's presence was overwhelming, like he was exerting a pressure on her, willing her to let him inside. The wind outside howled, but inside, the world seemed frozen. "No," Grace said more firmly, summoning the strength to move. With a final effort, she slammed the door shut and locked it, her heart racing. Just before the door closed, she heard the boy's voice one last time, barely a whisper. "You'll regret this." Grace stood there, her body shaking. She ran to the window, peering out into the night, but the boy was gone. The porch was empty, the yard still, as if he had never been there. She called the police, her hands trembling as she recounted the encounter. When the police arrived, they searched the area around her cottage but found no sign of the boy. No footprints, no trace of anyone being there. They reassured her it was probably just a Halloween prank, but Grace knew deep down that what she had seen wasn't a prank. Those eyes, they were something out of a nightmare. In the weeks that followed, Grace was plagued by nightmares. She would wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, convinced she could hear the boy's voice whispering, "You'll regret this." Sometimes she would catch glimpses of movement in the shadows outside her window, but when she looked, there was nothing there. Months later, Grace began hearing rumors around town, stories from others who had encountered strange, black-eyed children. The details were eerily similar: a knock at the door late at night, children with pitch-black eyes asking to be let inside. And in every case, those who let them in were never the same afterward. Some became ill, while others suffered terrible misfortune. Grace realized that her refusal to let the boy in had spared her from something far worse. As the years passed, the story of the black-eyed boy became part of Astoria's folklore. People whispered about it around campfires and at Halloween parties, warning each other never to open the door to strange children at night. Grace eventually moved away, but no matter where she went, she couldn't outrun the memory of that night. She could never shake the feeling that one day the boy would return, looking for what he had been denied. Because once you've encountered the black-eyed children, they never truly leave. They linger in the shadows, waiting for their chance to knock again. And next time, Grace knew, there might not be any way to say no. In Astoria, where the mist rolls in from the sea and the woods seem to whisper ancient secrets, people have learned to keep their doors locked after dark. They know that some visitors should never be let inside, no matter how innocent they might seem.